gamers, today on Dice and Dragons, Julie's here because we are going to be reviewing what has become one of our favorite games. It was a birthday present. It wasn't really the style of the game that she thought she would like, but so far it's seen the table more times than I originally expected. And I'll let Julie tell you about the game.
So today we're reviewing Clank, a deck building adventure, and as the name suggests, it's a deck building game.
Pretty on the nose, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's 2 to 4 players, about 60 minutes. We probably played it a little longer than that a few times, though we probably had a few shorter games as well. Mm-hmm. Ages 13 and above. Again, like I'd say, I think it probably, for some smart kids, could go down to 10 years old. Mm-hmm. So who designed it, Jay?
Well, the game is designed by Paul Dennen, and it is published by Renegade Studios. There was also some design work done by Dire Wolf as well. And it's quite an interesting game, but we'll tell you more about that as we get into the how to play. Don't forget, as always on Dice and Dragons, you can take a look down in the video description below for the timestamps that will take you to what you actually want to see in the video. And as always here on Dice and Dragons, you're going to grab your best friend, grab your drink, and let's take it to the table.
Why Clank though? Why not Clink?
I think it was just Clank making noise. It could be Clink, avoid the dragon or something like that,
well,
but
gold coins clink, they don't clank.
Well, you'll have to ask Paul Dennen that. Maybe we'll send him a message. Anyhow, the overview is coming right up. Now we're going to take a look at the components that come with Clank, a deck building adventure. And first I want to start off with the game board. As you can see, the game board is double-sided. Now the reason that it's double-sided is to add some replayability and change up your quest through the dungeon. And it's one of the things that I do really love about the game. It adds a lot of replayability without needing any expansions or really any extra components. Now we have our nice dragon bag here, and the dragon bag is where you're going to be storing the Clank cubes. Now, as you're going to be moving through the dungeon, you're going to be generating Clank, which is noise that is going to alert the deadly dragon that's going to try to kill the adventurers. The dragon is represented by the black dragon meeple that you can see here. We have the dragon cubes. The dragon cubes are black, and when you draw them out of the dragon bag, you're actually not going to be taking any damage. Whereas if you draw your adventurer's colored Clank cubes, it's your adventurer that's going to be taking damage. And the game is a 4-player game. We have our 4 different colors and the 4 different adventurer meeples that you can see right over there. Now we have these 4 stacks of cards that are separate from the rest. These are the reserve cards. They are always going to be available. They will be face up, and you can always acquire them until there are none left out. Once they're all acquired, they're gone. There's no way to really replenish them. The goblin that you'll notice right here is double-sided. The reason for that, the goblin is never in any deck. It's never in any stack of cards. It's always out there. You could always spend 1 attack to damage a goblin and gain 1 gold. Now we have our dungeon deck right here, and it's quite the large stack of cards. So you can see I'm just going to flip through it, and you know what, I'm going to actually take out another one of these cards and put it on the setup just so you guys can see it a little bit clearer, and we'll go over the kinds of cards that are in the dungeon deck. You have gems, sapphire, things that can score, as you can see from the scoring icon up there. It also can potentially initiate a dragon attack. We have monsters, the animated door, and the monster as well can initiate a dragon attack. You see the bonus that you'll get from defeating the monster, also what it requires to defeat it. We may also encounter some items such as the Boots of Swiftness, which will let us move quite well and give us some victory points at the end. And oh, take a look here. When you acquire them, you also get an extra movement point. We also have some companions like the Archaeologist that you can see, which has us +2 your generating your resources depending on what else you have. It also gives you 1 victory points. So the way you'd get extra resources, you draw a card, and if you have a monkey idol, you gain +2. So that is a solid card to play, especially if you're going to be attempting to acquire some of the items on the board. And this is an adventure game. It's all about the loot. You're definitely going after the items on the board. Another cool item, which is almost like a weapon but not quite, is the Wand of Wind, which would give you 3 victory points. It costs 6 to acquire, and you can teleport to an adjacent room or take a secret from an adjacent room. And that's really very cool. And as we get into the how to play, you're going to understand why you may want to use the Wand of Wind to either teleport, avoid damage, or bring something to you that you might not be able to get otherwise. And I'd forgotten to take this out, which is why I pulled it out of the deck, but we also have devices. So the device here is the ladder. When you use it, you gain 2 extra movement points. Now, whenever you use a device, it is then discarded. Now, once we've used the ladder, we would discard it. But the neat thing is you can play it and you can keep it out and essentially save it for the moment where you really need it. And I really like that aspect of the game. Now we have the Sneak, and Sneak is a very cool card. It generates 1 resource, 1 movement, and it also gives you -2 Clank, which is a great way of removing some of the Clank that you would have on the board. And we'll go over that a little bit more detail in the how to play and make it so you're just a little bit sneakier and a little bit safer as you're moving through the dungeon. Now you'll notice that we have this stack of cards that was next to it, and these are the starting decks. There are 4 starting decks. Each starting deck contains 6 Burgle, 1 Scramble, 2 of the side steps. No, it's only 1 side step. I apologize. It's a Scramble and a side step. And then you have the 2 Stumbles, which would generate Clank. And that gives you a total of the 10 starting cards that you're going to need when you are playing the game. Now we'll take a look at the components that we still have out, some of the items and the secrets. Obviously we have our gold, which comes in 5 and 1 denominations. There are the major secrets denoted by the large tokens, which could be things like, an extra 5 resource, 5 gold. Those are some great major secrets to have. We also have the minor secrets, which do similar things, but on a lower scale. So for example, this one is 2, whereas this one as well is 2. Let's take another one. Let's get some variety. 2 gold. Once again, gold. Or this one would let you potentially discard and trash a card, if I'm not mistaken. You do have more information in the rulebook on all those symbols, and we'll take a quick look at that, as well as a closer look at the cards themselves, just to help define the way we're going to play the game before we get into the how to play. We have the artifacts. Now the artifacts are the big point value items that you're going to be going after. They are located at different areas in the game. You can see on the game board where they're supposed to go. And depending on how brave you are as an adventurer, you'll be seeking out different artifacts. And it's important to note that in the game, you can only carry 1 artifact unless you happen to acquire a backpack, which is the perfect segue to our next tokens, which would let you carry an additional artifact. Now, there's a couple different strategies. You can get an artifact, get out quickly. And the reason for doing that is that once you get out, you start a timer along the top here. And then once you reach the end of the time track, everyone left in the dungeon dies. Now you may be wondering why you'd want to maybe just grab an item, get out as fast as possible. The reason for that is you have these mastery tokens, and the characters, the adventurers that do escape, gain 20 points, which is quite a whack load of points, and it's quite important to make sure that you get out and get them if possible. You may get trapped deep in the dungeon, but if you happen to get that 30-point artifact and you've picked up a lot of other items along the way, you can still win the game. Now, some other items that there are the crowns. You'll notice that there's different denominations on the crowns. There's actually 3 of them in the game, 10, 9, and 8. They do cost 7 gold. You have to purchase them in the market, and you pick whichever one is available, and you get the amount of points accordingly. Now there are the monkey idols, the last of the tokens and the artifacts you can pick up in the dungeon. They are located here. There are 3 of them. Once your hero enters the location, they may acquire 1 of the monkey idols. You cannot get all 3 of them at the same time. If you're trying to get all of them, you're going to have to go out and come back in to once again acquire another one of the monkey idols. And those are the components for a Clank, an adventure building game. Sorry, a deck building adventure game. But you almost are kind of building your own adventure, especially when you throw in some expansions that you'll be seeing on later videos. And there is the variety of the adventure, especially if you decide to play on the other side of the game board. Now we'll take a closer look at the rulebook just a little bit to highlight the different aspects of the cards, the different symbols, and give you guys a better idea of how you're going to play. And then we're going to take you through a 2-player version of the how to play. Don't want to get the game board too busy. So keep it right here, and I'll be back shortly. Now we're going to take a closer look at the cards in Clank. But before we do that, I just want to show you the handy-dandy field reference guide that you get on the rulebook. It explains everything that you need to know about the major secrets, what they do, the market items, what they do, as well as the minor secrets. As you can see, I was correct with the magic spring. It actually lets you trash a card, which is very good. And the importance of trashing cards becomes more apparent later on as you play the game, as you're trying to get rid of negative cards in your deck. For example, you may want to get rid of a stumble, which generates +1 Clank. We really don't want that in our deck, especially later on. And before we get too far into the cards, I did neglect to mention 2 items. We have the keys, which are components as well. These let you enter through locked spaces on the board. As you can see right here in the corner, we've got the board just to explain the dragon a little bit more. But to move through that locked space, you need 1 of the keys. Now, let's get into the cards and how you would acquire them. This is our starting hand right here. We've got the 6 cards that are available from the dungeon deck right along there. And then we have our 4 reserve piles of cards that are always available. And we've set it up like the beginning of the game. And when you start the game, you don't have any attack in your deck. You don't have anything that can affect the kobold or the goblin. You really only have your skill point generating resource cards, the burgles, and then your movement cards, the scrambles, as you saw there. There's also the sidestep, which generates movement, and of course the dreaded stumble, which generates Clank. Now when you're playing the cards, you play them 1 at a time. And the reason why you play them out 1 at a time is that cards, especially cards that you acquire later on, have different effects. Let's take a look at the sleight of hand right here. Sleight of hand lets you discard a card to draw 2 cards, meaning you could have discarded one of your burgles, for example, and then drawn 2 more cards from your deck. And that is why you play them out 1 by 1. We'll take a look at the cards in closer detail now so you can see some of the effects that they have and what ones we could potentially acquire. We'll start with the kobold, as it's very interesting. Now the kobold has the danger symbol, the dragon attack symbol, meaning that when it's drawn from the top of the deck, a dragon attack would occur. It's also dangerous, which means you will pull 1 extra cube for dragon attacks. As you can see right here in a 2-player game, you start pulling 3, meaning when the kobold is out, you would actually pull 4. Now that is the same thing for the dragon shrine, actually. Take a look at the shrine. Danger, pull +1 cube for dragon attacks. Not good, but it's a device and you get the usability. So once you acquire it, it goes into your play area. You can use it whenever you want. You can either get 2 gold or trash a card in your play area or discard pile. Very good card, especially when it comes to managing your deck and getting rid of cards that you no longer want. Now we'll take a look at 2 of the items. Let's take a look at the Wand of Recall. So with the Wand of Recall, if you have an artifact, teleport to an adjacent room, and it also generates 2 skill points. And then finally, we will take a look at the Elven Cloak. So the Elven Cloak is -2 Clank, which is great. Lets you also draw a card and generates 1 skill resource. Very good card. Now that we've gone over just some of what we have on the board, you might be wondering how we acquire them or how we defeat them. Well, we acquire them by spending the resources indicated at the bottom of their cards. So for example, the Master Burglar would cost 3 skill points in order to acquire. With regards to defeating the Kobold, we'd have to spend 1 of our attack resource to defeat it. And just before I forget, if we happen to defeat it, we do generate 1 skill point. And we don't have anything like that as we're starting out. Now let's see what we're actually going to end up doing just in terms of acquiring cards and how we'd acquire them. I'm going to just move this handy dandy reference guide off to give a little bit more of a clear space that I can work with. And we've got 5 resource and 1 movement. We will acquire the Master Burglar as it's worth 3. I like the fact that I can trash a burglar in your play area or discard pile. Gonna want to be getting rid of those later on. And we want to get some combat and attack. We will acquire from the reserve area for 2 the Mercenary. Those cards go into the discard immediately. These cards go into the discard. And we will then draw a new hand. Not going to draw all of it out. But once we've drawn out our 5 cards, we then reshuffle the discard pile and make a new draw. And if there had been any Clank generated during the turn, we would take 2 cubes. We didn't have a stumble this time, but if we had played these 2 stumbles and placed them in the Clank area on the board. It's just off the board because I don't have the full thing set up right now. And then we will draw a new card. Whenever you take a card from the dungeon area, we draw new cards. And in this case, we get Mr. Whiskers, meaning we have a dragon attack that occurs the moment the dragon symbol is drawn. You would then reach into the dragon bag. Let me grab that just to give you an example. We would reach into the dragon bag, withdraw a certain number of cubes. There are no cubes in it right now as I have not set it up. And we draw the number according to the dragon track. We have 3 here with the danger for both, which would actually be 5. And we would draw out 5 cubes. That's another reason you might want to acquire cards like this or defeat them early on. It makes venturing through the dungeon more dangerous. Now that we've taken a closer look at all the cards, the reserve, the dungeon deck, we'll take you through how you can quickly set up the game and then move right on with a playthrough. Keep it right here. I've started setting up the game board, and the only thing I've done so far is just place the items on the board that are always going to be out. We have our 2 adventurers. We're going to be playing as yellow and blue. We have the mastery tokens for the victors that can escape the dungeon. We have placed all of the market items in the market area. I just stacked them to make it a little bit cleaner and so you guys could see everything that is out there. And we've got our gold here just piled up near the board. The reserve cards are out. This is going to be the dungeon deck area, and we shall use these 2 area for our players. But before we go through all of that, I want to show you guys what needs to be done to get the game set up and what's actually not going to always be consistent in the game. There was definitely some randomness during the setup. The first thing I'm going to do though, just to make some room, we're taking our nice dragon bag. We take all of the black dragon cubes. They go into the bag. We shall put it next to the deck. We will then place the dragon marker to the corresponding player count. As this is a 2-player game, it starts here. If it was 3, it would be here, obviously, or 4 here. It's 2 players, the marker goes there. So we are now ready with regards to the dragon. The setup is done. Next, what we have to do is put the secrets onto the board. Now to do that, we shuffle them up, and then we take 2 minor secrets, and we place them at the minor secret locations. I almost put one there, as you saw, for the major secrets. And when it comes to placing the major secrets, actually, some of them are going to be going back into the game box. There's always a little extra just to keep that variety when you're playing the game, and also that sense of mystery. And we'll continue setting these up. Just about done here. And there is one more minor secret location. There it is within the crystal cave. Next, you do the same thing for the major secrets. Shuffle them up and then place them randomly on the game board. Now you may notice that we have the artifacts here, but they all look like treasure chests now. And the reason for that is the artifacts aren't all going to be on the game board. It depends on the number of players that you have. In this case of a 2-player game, we are only going to have 5 of the artifacts out. The other 2 are going to be returned to the game box. As you can see, we've got 2 secrets, in this case, plus 5 skill points, and a large healing potion that are going to be returned to the game box. Let's shuffle up once again the artifacts, and we will discard 2 of them. The 2 that were discarded, the 30 and the 5. So not too bad, something early on and something later on in the game. We will then set up the others. All right. And now the board is set up. The next thing we need to do is draw the dungeon deck. And we're going to draw 6 cards for the start. So there's those 3. We drew the ruby. Now when you start the game, you do not have any cards with the dragon attack symbol on them. They get returned to the deck. So for the moment, I'm just going to put it aside. We'll draw another card. We get the silver spear. And then we get, it's an orc grunt. This one will be set aside as well. And then we get emerald, orc grunt. Lots of dragon attack cards. The dead run. So those will now make up the 6 dungeon deck cards. These, we will then just grab the dungeon deck, and we will go ahead and shuffle them back into the deck. The next thing we are going to do is we're going to take the starting decks. I have 1 of them here and 1 here. We will shuffle them up. Only 10 cards, nice and easy to shuffle. You're pretty much going to be going through them on your first turn anyway. Well, your first 2 turns, as there's 10 cards. Put them next to the starting adventurers. And we are now ready to play the game. Next, you're going to have to determine who is the first player and how much Clank is going to be going in the starting area. And we'll do that in a second when we get into how to play the game. As you can see, the setup is nice and easy, and keep it right here because I'll be coming back in a minute. Now the sneakiest player gets to go first, and in this case, because blue is one of my favorite colors, I'll say that blue was the sneakiest player. That means he will then have to place 3 Clank into the space, and yellow as a second player must place 2 Clank cubes. Now if this was a 3 to 4 player game, the 3rd player would place only 1. And the 4th player would then place 0. Now, just to keep this gameplay space here a little bit neater, I'm not going to draw all the cards at once. I want to give you guys a chance to see how we would play the game. Now, I'll draw blue's starting 5 cards. So immediately we get the stumble, we get the burgle, we get another burgle, the sidestep, and the burgle. And these are my starting 5 cards for blue. And you do have to play all of them. There isn't a way for you to discard them unless you get a card that allows you to discard. In this case, what we'll do is play the stumble first. I'll just pick them up into my hand. It'll be a little bit easier. Play the stumble, put the +1 Clank into the area. I'm going to use the sidestep to move into the dungeon. And in this case, I can move 1. And then I have the 3 burgle, meaning I can acquire something that is worth 3. And I need some movement So it's going to be an Explorer. I will acquire an Explorer and add it into my discard pile. Now that is the first player's turn. Now I just want to clarify a couple of things that are on the board as we're going through the how to play. You can see areas right here that have the 2 movement icon. That means you need to have 2 movement points to move from here to here. When you enter a space, you may acquire 1 of the secrets that are there. So if it was Blue's turn and he entered the space, it would be 1 secret that he could acquire. No more than that. This symbol is locked, and as we discussed, you need the key to enter a locked space. You then have the monster symbols that are on the board. Sometimes they're a double. That means if you move through this space, you will take a damage. Let's just say Blue is here. Blue moves into the crystal cave. I would take 1 damage and add to the damage track that we have here at the bottom of the board. Now the other thing too important to notice is the crystal cave. Unless you have some type of card, some type of ability that would let you not be stuck in the crystal cave, once you enter a crystal cave, your movement ends. It doesn't matter how many other movement points you have, you are not allowed to spend them once you enter the crystal cave. And the other areas that we have on the board, you see the heart logos. When you enter those spaces, you heal. So for example, later on in the game, Blue has acquired the artifact. We've got some damage per se. We're doing fairly well with only 3. We move into this area, we would be able to heal 1 damage. And obviously once your damage gets to max, you are dead, and that is how you don't lose the game. That is how you're taken out of the game. As we said in the intro video, it is the player with the highest score, whether they are living or dead, that wins the game. So we've gone through a turn for Blue. We've acquired a card. Let's see what Yellow gets. We'll take out the cards. We got Burgle, 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 Sidestep, and a Stumble. So the exact same draw that we got with Blue. Put a cube in here. We shall move 1 as well into the dungeon. These cards are now spent. And with the 3 Burgle, I will also acquire an Explorer. Now the reason for that is movement is a key part of the game. And right now we're low on movement. There are some good cards out here. I don't particularly like the Dead Run. The Swagger is not that bad, but I want something that's going to generate resource and get me moving, which Explorers are very good to do. So we'll keep playing for a little bit. You're getting the gist of it, but I want to show you guys some more interesting elements of the game as well. It is now Blue's turn. We draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we just pull our 5 cards. It's a Stumble, Scramble, Burgle, Burgle, Burgle. That's what we get. So once again, we'll play the Stumble. Just move that back for the discard right now. Generate Clank. We are then able to move 1 with the Scramble. And we've got 4 resource points from the other cards. Let's put the Stumble right here and we'll show you it was a movement, which I already took, and the 4 resource points. Now what do I want to do? 4 is really good. We've got the Elven Dagger, which lets us draw a card when we play it, and also starts getting us some combat. Spear is very good as well. And I'm going to acquire the Elven Dagger because the ability to draw a card is just too good. So that's my move right there. We then shuffle up all the cards in our discard pile. And don't forget, when you acquire a card in Clank, it goes to your discard and not into your hand. And to keep the area clean, we'll leave it like that for right now. We then draw another card. It is the Flying Carpet. And it will now be Yellow's turn. I just picked up the 5. I wasn't going to draw them out. Easier that way. It's Burgle, 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 Stumble, Scramble. So the exact same thing, and that's fairly normal as we're starting off the game. So once again, we will play the Stumble first. We then have Put that right in the discard. We've got our 3 resources from the burgle and the resource and a movement point. Once again, we are going to move 1, and we have 4 resource points. Let's change things up a little bit. We'll pick up the swagger, and the swagger does give us a movement point, and you get some bonuses if you do happen to generate Clank, which now means that the dead run could be an interesting card. And we want some combat ability. We will acquire a mercenary spending all 4 of our points. This goes into the discard. Shuffle it up, and we shall get ready for our next turn. Now, I think we're getting to a solid point in the game where I will have explained just about everything for you guys. So we'll go through another turn or 2 possibly, depending on what happens, and we'll decide what to do after that. Now it's blue's turn. We will draw up to 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll place the cards just right here and then give us a little bit of room for discard. I've drawn the Elven Dagger, the Burgle, the Stumble, the Burgle, and the Explorer. First thing I'll play is the Stumble. Place it in the discard and add another Clank. That's not looking too good. I want to potentially get another card. Hopefully it'll be something good. We'll start with the Elven Dagger. Draw a card. It is another Stumble. I've got to play it. That wasn't very good. It generates another Clank. So drawing a card, as you can see in the game, can be good, may not be good. It really depends. That's why trashing cards can be very important. You really want to get those out of your deck potentially. Next, what I still have my 1 resource. I've got another resource from the Burgle, another resource from the other Burgle, and then 2 resources from the Explorer and 1 movement point. Now you may be wondering where I can go. If you look at this, we've got this direction with the arrow. The arrow means you can only move 1 direction. So from this crystal cave, you need 2 movement points to move up here. And blue cannot move down into the space. He can only move up out of it. As I don't have 2 movement points, I'm not able to go and potentially acquire a secret. I can decide to waste my movement point and not move, but there are some options down here. We got some artifacts. And I've only got 1 movement point. I'll venture into the crystal cave. And I'm just noticing something that I neglected to do on yellow's turn, which was draw the monkey bot. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back in time slightly. So, and this was at the end of yellow's last turn. We had the Clank, the dragon attack. All of the Clank would go back. I am removing 2 Clank that was generated from the Stumble. Put everything in the bag, shaking this up. Remember, this was at the end of yellow's turn, not blue's turn. I apologize. We draw 3 cubes. There's no danger out there, so I'm going to draw out 3 cubes, which is 2 yellow and a black. Not very good for yellow. The black cube is then discarded, and yellow had taken 2 damage. Now we'll get back to blue's turn. My apologies. 2 Clank for blue that go out there. We have our 5 resources still to spend. And what would you like to do? So for 5 resources, the spear has got great attack. We'll acquire the spear. And then the only thing I can do is spend 2. We'll get a mercenary. We've got some monsters out there. Our game turn, we might have to move through monsters. It's going to be good to have some attack. And notice we still have the attack point from our Elven Dagger. That is wasted. There is nothing that we can do on the board with that 1 attack point. We shall return everything into the game box. And I accidentally knocked over some Clank like I was worried about. Not a big deal. We're going to go through yellow's turn and just continue. We'll draw a card, unlike I did last time, and it is the Dragon Shrine. Let's shuffle up once again yellow's cards and draw out the 5 cards. Oh, I neglected to shuffle 1 in. Not a big deal. As I'm showing you guys how to play. If it was a real game, that would be a big deal. You don't want to potentially cheat like that. What we have is the Burgle, the Scramble, the Burgle, the Explorer, and a Stumble. Now yellow adds another cube to the Clank space. We do have 2 movement points, and that's perfect because I wanted to show this to you. So the first thing we're going to do is move and acquire 1 of the secrets. Now remember, when you enter a space, it's only 1 secret that you can acquire. we pick the one that we want, and this is 2 attack points you can see from the swords. We will then keep this and able to spend it later on our turn. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points that we can spend. As we have the swagger, the dead run is interesting because we generate Clank, and we don't have to stop in Crystal Caves. There's also the Monkey Bot, which lets us draw 3 cards. And as it goes really well with the swagger, lets us draw 3 cards, we'll acquire that one. Now we'll take this, shift this over, slide this up. This will then go into our discard pile. And now that you've seen 3 turns of Clank, the game is going to continue as the heroes move through the board, through into the dungeon, and try to escape with the most points possible. As you can see, once again, from the green, this is worth 25, that one's worth 20, 15, and so on and so forth. So we're going to leave it right here. Hope you guys enjoyed our mini playthrough of Clank, and we'll get into our review of the game. So Clank, a deck building adventure. What do you think of the game? This wasn't our first time playing it. We played it a few times. Let the viewers know.
Well, there's a few things that I really like about it. It allows me to be a little competitive. It has a little bit of a competitive angle, even though it doesn't allow you to completely beat up on somebody else. Although you always find the cards that allow you to beat up on us a little bit.
Hey, I did not have the cards that beat up on you last game. That was other players, and I also wasn't the one that drew all of your cubes from the bag and proceeded to murder you. Well, I did get the final shot, and I did kind of enjoy that.
So I like that about it. I also like that there's a little bit of a time sensitivity to it. It gets a little bit harder if you don't, to try to get you to speed things up a little bit.
Yeah, basically, if I said, you're basically saying that you like the fact that if somebody leaves and gets those points, it changes the dynamic of the game and adds the time pressure.
Well, also that the dragon timer goes up as people start, as we saw in yesterday's game, as somebody kept taking all the eggs, the dragon count kept going up. And that there's different strategies to it. It's not always picking up all the artifacts that will get you to win. Somebody came very close to winning with just, by being the first person to leave.
Yep.
So that's a different...
slim point differential. It was really about you were 1 turn away from victory?
Yeah, he killed me when I had the cards left to play. It was my turn next. But that's always the case with games. That's not always the case. Actually, as I said, I've beaten you quite well in the past as well. So that's what's fun. It's not always the same game twice. It's not always the same strategy. So that's what I like. I did find it a little hard at first with the deck building, and anybody who hasn't done deck building, and I think actually the 2 people that played with us yesterday,
it was their first time.
It was their first time, so they found it a little difficult to understand that you should pick up cards that allow you to draw other cards. The mechanics of it for the first time or 2 that you play might be a little bit difficult to grasp, and you may, if you're playing with somebody like Jason yesterday, I draw 2, I dump this one, and I pick up this one, and I get to do this, and I pick up 2 gold, and the 2 other people at the table were saying, what did he just do? That being said, it's a lot of fun. I'm actually looking forward to trying the other iterations of this now.
Yes, we've got the expansion, so you will be seeing some of those in our upcoming reviews. I'll tell you guys what I thought about the game. I really enjoy this game. Coming off of Scott Pilgrim, the last deck builder that we played, we also have Rune Age, which we might get to a review of, which are some a little bit more complicated games. I have to say that Clank is simple, straightforward. It's a great way to introduce people into a deck building game, and then once you figure it out, there are so many different strategies. The one time that, not the one time, but the first time Julie beat me, it was because she built the deck to slay monsters, and she was just wrecking everything. I'm running around through the dungeon, she's killing monsters, getting all this gold, then finally just buys everything and says, peace out. And I was like, well, what? I built this whole different deck, and she managed to win. The game changes every time. The fact that there is 2 sides to the board means that you have enough variety in the game that you can play it multiple times. And what I really like about the game is it doesn't really seem to get old. We've only played it probably about close to 10 times now, getting up there. And I don't think we've seen every card in the deck still as of yet. Could be just the way we're shuffling them, but I really like that. There is variety, and you take out the expansions, which you can just throw into the base game, make it a little crazier, or use them on their own for a different kind of experience. Means there's a lot of value here in this game. Now, we'll move on to, say, our rating of the game. So, Julie, what would you rate this game?
I think it's a solid 8.
I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Wow,
Like,
2 games in a row that you're outranking them.
outranking you, it's rare that happens, actually.
Normally I'm the one that gives the high scores, and you're more of a critic.
I really like this game. The response we've gotten from a lot of other people, even people that are in my gaming group, I have people say that they don't like deck building games. This game comes out, they're like, it's not my favorite, but it's not too long, and they have a good time playing it. As we said, the game can run over 60 minutes, but that's usually when you've got new players that are taking a lot of time on their turn. If you know what you're doing, the game is easily around like 30 to 40 minutes.
And I think the only reason I'm saying that it's an 8 is also because, as we've said with other games like Descent that have a little bit more strategy, I think those are still the ones that I reserve the higher score for. Mm-hmm. Deck building games are not my favorite games, but I do really enjoy this one, and I don't mind when you say, hey, let's pull it out.
Yeah, you really didn't enjoy Scott Pilgrim. You were more okay with Rune Age, but it was just a little bit more complicated. We'll get back to that at another point in time. But yeah, Scott Pilgrim just didn't do it for you at all. And with that being said, guys, thank you for watching the video. Take a look up there shortly, or right now you're going to see the links to our other videos. You can find the links to all of our social media channels down in the video description. As always on Dice and Dragons, grab your drink, grab your best friend, and I'll let Julie say it this time. Did you forget?
Yes.
Keep playing games.
Keep playing games.